Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We have a session on IDE productivity, and my name is Alaa Shiban. I'm a program manager on the Cloud Tools team. And I'll be talking to Alex Turner, senior program manager on the Managed Languages team, Kathy Sullivan, program manager on the IDE team, and Stuart Kent on the developer productivity tools team.
That's right, yeah.
So let's start by talking about kind of productivity all up. What changed? What's new in 2015, Visual Studio 2015? Do we have a new theme around what Visual Studio focuses on?
Yeah, so I think really what folks are going to see is that we're still focusing on that overall productivity experience, and I think these guys are going to go over lots of those goodies in the editor and with your code. But really, we're bringing on some new experiences for all those great devices that are out there with those really dense screens, and also those experiences where you have a lot of accounts that you use for things like Azure and TFS, and how do we make that experience just seamless? So it doesn't matter where you are in the IDE and what account you're using.
So I see that you're using a Surface Pro 3,
Yes.
right? And so what's new for devices that have touch capability, higher resolution type of screens?
Yeah, so in 2015, we've added support for touch gestures in the editor. So you can scroll up and down, you can select an entire line, you can pinch and zoom in and out, bring up context menus with a press and hold gesture as well. And you're also going to see that through some of the icons, like things in the toolbar right underneath File Edit View, things in Solution Explorer, we now have support high dense or high resolution images, and we're going to be bringing a lot more of these areas on in the product. So this is just sort of our first pass over some of the top level things as well. And we're also, we have a new feature we call custom layouts. So as you work between devices or doing different tasks, you can find the custom layouts up in the window menu. And you'll see that I have two layouts. Sometimes I'm just working with my Surface. And so when I work with just my Surface, I really just like to focus on my code. So you see, like, I get rid of all my tool windows and things. So I just have my code here. And then I can use my mouse to go over and bring up tool windows as I work. But I can also, when I get back to my desk where I have, three layouts, I like to bring up things like Test Explorer and the Server Explorer so I can check on things that I'm doing in Azure. So you can imagine some of these windows over on those other displays. And there's also some keyboard shortcuts, Control-Alt-1 through 0, so 1 through 9 and 0, so you can get to the 10 layouts that you save.
And all those custom layouts, they get shared through your profile.
That's
so
right.
You can just move from one device
they
to the
roam
other.
with you as well.
Right, that's cool.
And so if I go up to my avatar in the upper right-hand corner and down to account settings, you can see here that KathyS@live.com is actually my personalization account. So that's where I keep all my settings, what theme I use, whether I like line numbers on. Also, I'll roam all my custom layouts that I work with. And then you can also see here in the lower left-hand corner that I now have a couple other accounts that I use. So things like my Azure account is here. I have a couple of VSO services that I keep my personal code on. So now I can sign in with my personalization account. I get all those goodies that I like to carry across machines. And then I can also add accounts that I use throughout my development lifecycle.
So does that mean that I no longer have to log in every time, for instance, with store accounts and Azure accounts and my own account after I set them up in Visual Studio?
Exactly, yeah. So over time, within the life, or as we sort of bring more things on in 2015, you'll start to see that experience. As you just use features, you get to choose the account you want to use, but you've already added it to your connected accounts list.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So speaking of connected, we have Alex, who you've worked on some stuff with connected type of functionality for analyzing Azure type of productivity, as well as kind of general language type of functionality.
Yeah, we've really taken a look. If you look at code analysis, we've been working on Roslyn. We've been trying to get C# and VB re-implemented, and it's there now. You can try it in the preview. But it was always more than just trying to get the compiler back up and running with new features. It was also the fact that we'd have an API, and you could start to talk to that. And we realized that was the best API to sort of become the modern code analysis experience in Visual Studio. We've had FXCop forever, right, since 2005, and it still enforces the same kind of .NET 2.0 cleanliness rules that you've had since then. But people have asked for more, right? One side, they want language stuff. How do I use link? How do I use dynamic async? Things like that correctly. But also just you're using an API. Like I might be learning Azure, and I'm new to this. I'm new to blob storage. These different concepts. I'm kind of moving an ASP.NET side over. How do I make sure that I'm actually doing all this new stuff correctly? So if we take a look, I've got here a project. This is an Azure site that has some backend behind it, and you notice that I'm starting to get here in the error list in the squiggles some errors and warnings here that are specific to Azure, right? In fact, if I go over here and look under here inside my references, you see that I have a specific kind of reference, an analyzer reference, and it's pulling in the Visual Studio Azure Code Analysis pack, which is defining here 12 rules. One is so serious it's an error, but the other ones are basically a bunch of warnings that are going to find code smells around how you're using Azure.
So that pack you can download, and so as you're building a framework, you can come up with new packs to go with those frameworks and use them in what you're doing. Yeah.
This wasn't something I had to go install as like a global VS extension that's going to run in every app I have. This is one that comes targeted for this project, and so it means that I get a new version of maybe the Azure SDK, and it comes with new versions of
So
these
the project
packages.
template also includes these.
Yeah, the templates can pull in these kind of NuGet
cool.
packages that you can then
yeah.
update. And the benefit of it being part of your project is the fact that, well, now some other dev on my team, he's not going to introduce a bug, put it into source control, I pull it down, and I see 10 warnings, right? Maybe I've set them to be errors. I use warn as error, let's say. I don't want my build to break because somebody else introduced a bug, and so it's get everybody on the same page.
So this comes down from NuGet, and you install it much like any NuGet package, and it travels with the source control. You check it in. You can update it much like a NuGet package.
Yeah, and we expect there to be APIs that folks ship that have both the API that you expect and also that kind of code analysis that goes with it, which always then stays
it starts to
up
be
to
when
date.
you develop a framework, you kind of think of framework and the code analysis rules to go with it, so that people use the framework, through the right rails.
Right.
You see
like
what I mean?
if you're somebody who's written an API, like we write APIs publicly for other folks, but even inside like an enterprise, you're going to be writing APIs you want other teams to use. And you write docs, like we write white papers, and other people, you're writing stuff you hope people read so that they do your stuff correctly. Now you actually can kind of enforce your will by shipping that analysis that looks at your code and ship it with the API. And the cool bit here, I see that it's telling me, well, I shouldn't set shared access start time to current time, right? Like I'm doing blob storage, and I want my blob to be available right now, so I've set the date time to now, but it says I'm not supposed to do that. And if I hit Control Dot, and pull up the new Lightbulb UI that we've got, it shows me a fix. And it says, all right, well, the fix here is to remove shared access start time and to stop doing that. And we've got a diff that actually shows me what that's going to look like when I do it.
And I'm seeing like squigglies inside of the preview window. What's that?
Yeah, so it's showing me actually that the red line that's being removed had a squiggle, right? And that's actually the squiggle here that I'm fixing by doing it. So we're able to show you kind of what the future universe looks like. This is all that benefit we get from having
And of course, all its
Roslyn.
magic is the Roslyn API, isn't it?
The immutable
you can really
structure,
write cool fixes based on that.
Yeah,
nice.
and the thing here, like, it's not just that you can write the fix and kind of show the diff. You see here that it has a little arrow, and I'm like, well, why shouldn't I set this? I want it to be available now. And it says, all right, well, you shouldn't set it to the current time. If you want it available now, do that. I could say, give me some more info. And when I click, I can now actually go find the information up on the web that release it. So like, learn about clocks.
So even if you can't calculate the fix, you can at least provide a link to help pages to advise on how you go about it.
Exactly. However far you can go, right? Like just tell people what they have to do themselves to clean it up.
Yeah.
So as a side note, this is a Q&A session as well. So if you have questions that you want to get our way, go on and send us questions, and we'll be taking some of them live. So the Lightbulb seems new. I'm also noticing that the error list seems a bit different than earlier versions in VS.
So one of the things we wanted to do, like there's been a lot of limitations. We've had the error list for a while. It's kind of last revamped again back in 2005. And it's done a lot for us up to then, but it had limitations. Like, for example, we want to show code analysis warnings here, right? This is a single place you can get your live compiler warnings, your live code analysis. But this would not support the kind of thousands, tens of thousands of code analysis hits you might get if you had a big, giant solution with lots of projects. And so, for example, here, I have one warning remaining. I can kind of cause a few extra issues here, maybe remove some semicolons. And I can see I've got some errors, I've got some warnings, and you can see here, we actually now show the code, right? So, for example, AP3002, if I click that link, I get to that same kind of information I had in the Lightbulb. So it's a way that from here I can always kind of get more content, figure stuff out. And for here, like CS1002, let's say I want to filter that out for some reason right now. You'll notice when I hover on the code column, I've now got a filter icon. And if I click that, you think of sort of like Excel data tables, right? We're going to give you that ability to filter on all the different columns you've got.
So you can filter on different rule sets and stuff like that. Show me all the errors out of this particular pack.
Yeah, right. So there's columns I could choose to show, right, that would maybe tell me like the category of this rule, and I could start to say, I don't want to see security rules right now, or I do want to see.
So we're setting up a much better way of managing your errors and stuff like that, filtering, searching.
You could have like hundreds in here, right?
Yeah, you could have hundreds, and you can control which ones you see. All that stuff you used to do with rule sets to control FX cop, right, and the Visual Studio Code analysis. Now you can do that generally. The compilers learned about rule set files. It's learned about these codes and how to deal with them.
So now you can understand and kind of get more insights on your code, the different warnings and the different analysis things that could improve your code as you're typing them. So why squigglies? Why, as you're typing, it seems to be rather than something that shows up later on in your process?
So for example, like we've had FX cop for a while. It's there. People benefit from it. But it's one of those polarizing things, right? Some people love it, and some people hate it. They're like, oh my God, I run it an hour after I code, and it nags me about stuff. And we find out that it's not so much the guidance that it's giving. It's not the rules that are bad necessarily. It's well, I coded back here. I've already kind of paged that stuff out. And now I'm working over here, and I run FX cop. I do a build or something, and now you tell me, oh, you messed that up back then. Well, when I was coding it, I would have liked to know that.
It's kind of too late, isn't it? By the time you get to that, and you think, oh no, I'm not going to bother to go and do that.
And then people want to just suppress it, and then they kind of build this backlog. And so what we find is those same people, you put the squiggle right in front of them the moment you introduce it, even before you finish typing the line almost. You don't even get to the semicolon, we've squiggled it. And now, oh, I should name this like this. I should make this public. I should do whatever, right? And I'm able to keep it in the zone as I'm coding. And that's kind of a lot of the stuff we're adding.
So this helps you preempt changes that you might need to do as you're coding, rather than waiting for after the fact, kind of bringing the changes that need to happen to the moment. So talking about kind of the moment and understanding the code you're working on, Stuart, you guys have been working on code lens, code map, things that also help you get the analysis earlier and as you're working.
So with code lens, Kathy will bring it up in a second. With the code lens so the code lens team indicators, which is, sorry, I have to put my glasses on. Right. So here's code lens here. So you can see what you're seeing at the class level and at the method level, the property level. You're getting information about your code, and that's just so some of this is references. So this is references to your code from the rest of the solution. It's just getting all the details up. There you go, and then you can list down those. And actually, what we found is if you look at the usage data since this went in 2013, you find that more people use this than they now do Shift F12. It's kind of interesting. And then
simply by bringing it into
it's the same principle. You bring it into the editor, and you it's there when you need it. You don't have to go searching. Now the next one we've got are these team indicators, and what they do is they bring you data about who's been working on the code and the changes they've made. Now, before you had these, you'd have to go to a separate tool window and then another tool window and drill in, and also, in fact, you'd have to do even more work than that, because what these do, they bring it at the class level and the method level. So it's showing the changes on that class, or even better, the changes that have impacted that method. So it's kind of fairly cool.
You kind of know immediately who to go find when
and
something's not as you expect.
And it's actually using Roslyn under the covers to do that cutting out of the methods and finding those code elements. Now, what we've added for 2015 is, so you now see it says the name Bruce Lampson. This is actually, what is this? This is the Entity Framework open source project straight out of GitHub. And this is Bruce Lampson was the last person to change it. There have been 9 other people changing it, and the last change was 2 days ago. So we've added the 2 days ago.
Nice.
We've also added a new view, which actually gives you a graphical view of the team activity. So you can see here immediately who's been working on the code most and when. All right. So you see Bryce has been working on it fairly recently, but actually AJC Vickers has been working on it around here. Bryce was the last one. And you can also go back and kind of see how long they've been working on it. It looks like Bryce has joined the project recently, but AGC Vickers was back 200 days ago, so he's been this on a while. So if you want somebody to ask about general questions of the code, you'll probably go to AJC Vickers. All right. If you want somebody to ask about specific changes that have been made, then you'll go to Bryce Lampson. All right.
Sounds good. I will get back to you on,
Okay.
we'll get more into CodeMap and CodeLens. I do see a question. Let's take a question from Ken. How will these errors, warnings, and we might need to scroll and see the rest of the question. How will these errors, warnings, and something?
It's such tease. What does it say?
Okay, we'll get back to the question in a minute. So I heard you mention GitHub. So this is not.
Oh yes. So the Git stuff was added in VS 2013 Update 3, and because Git is a distributed source code control system, you actually have all the information you need on the machine. So what we did was instead of, whereas with TFVC it's on the server, you have to have a service that will actually go and crunch the information, serve it up. With Git, we do all that crunching locally on the machine. So you can have your Git repository from anywhere. Doesn't have to be in TFS, doesn't have to be in VSO, it can be from GitHub. Wherever you can get a Git repository, have it in here, this will work.
That's awesome.
Okay.
fantastic. So let's talk about CodeMap.
Actually, before I do, there's
talk
just
about
one other thing I should mention. We've also, we're in the process of enabling this for VSO and TFVC, okay? So that's Team Foundation Version Control in VSO. It's in a limited public preview, and if I just bring up this OneNote here, this notepad here, you'll actually see that you can request, if you want your account enabled for this, we're accepting requests. It will be on a first-come, first-served basis, and we're sort of scaling up slowly, so that's why we're doing it gently like this. So this is the email address. Just email us, and we'll do our best to enable it.
So everyone who's watching here live, they're the ones who get early access.
Yeah, and just a constraint, unfortunately, is North Central and South Central US regions, because we've only deployed it to those regions at the moment, and you'll need VS 2013 Update 4 or VS 2015 Preview to use it.
Speaking of 2013, can Visual Studio 2013 and the latest Visual Studio 2015 work side by side at this point?
Yes, they
Okay.
can. Yeah.
Fantastic.
I encourage you to do so.
In fact,
Yeah.
I forwarded something on my Twitter account explaining somebody had just done that. So
Fantastic.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's take another question. How will these errors, warnings, and suggestions work with third-party tools such as ReSharper?
Right. And so, we love ReSharper, and the idea here is that we're actually pulling all of these things into one common place, right? That we're providing the kind of places in the error list with the filtering that everybody can come party together. It's still likely that ReSharper is going to have kind of their own things they want to add, as they often do, to the margin to show different kinds of light bulbs and stuff like that. But the idea is that we start to pull towards this unified experience. And we've been talking with the ReSharper folks, right, about exactly how they fit in with these kind of IDE extensions. Like when you ship an API, it comes with a code fix. How does that work with them? So stay tuned for that.
Fantastic.
So shall I move on to CodeMap?
Let's.
Okay. So I'll start here, I think. So what we've been doing, so just to recap, I mean, CodeMap is a way of visualizing your code. I'm responsible for all the architecture tools in Visual Studio, and we put out a blog post about 2 weeks ago explaining our sort of strategy here. And what we're doing is we're focusing on getting designs out of code, straight from code, so they're live. Okay, so that's where our resource and effort is going into it. That's one aspect. And then the other aspect, which kind of relates to the code analysis stuff, is architectural analysis. So dependency, using those visualizations to help you analyze the dependencies and then set up rules. And I'll show you what we have now, but Alex and I can talk a little bit more about where we want to be headed with that. Okay.
Sounds good. And the idea here is to kind of visualize, again, use higher level insights by looking over a topology or top-down kind of look.
Yeah, so I'll run through a couple of scenarios now. Okay, the first scenario I'll do is a sort of and as I do, I'll point out the new sort of stuff we're doing and where stuff we've still got to do. So let's start top down. So what I've got here is the code for an internal experimental tool for visualizing backlogs in TFS. Okay, so this is I don't know, do you guys use it, backlog maps?
I mean, we maintain pretty hefty backlog.
Right.
We go through a cycle. Yeah.
Right. So we wanted to try out different ways of visualizing our backlogs on Kanban boards and stuff like that, okay? And some of those ideas are actually feeding into the work going on now with TFS and VSO, which is great to see. So let's just start with the architecture menu, and I'll generate a dependency graph. So a couple of things you'll see here. The first is we've now got a new code map. It was quite hard to create a new code map from scratch, and we've got that on there, so you can now, it's very easy to create a new code map. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to generate a dependency graph. And what you see here is we have for solution, which is what we had before, and for solution without building. So the way this works, it sort of predates Roslyn, is there is actually what's called a code index at the back, which is a SQL database where we crack all the code out of binaries, actually. What was happening is that every time you made even a character change in your code, when you're trying to do things, it kept trying to rebuild. And we find that some customers, some people have not very fast building solutions. I was with a customer about 6 months ago, and in fact, because of this, that they spent a day whilst I was there actually cleaning up their solution to make it build faster, which was interesting. So I'm going to choose that, and what this is doing now is it's just creating a graph of the solution. We'll see it come up in a second. So that's at a high level the map of my code. Let me put the legend on, and in the legend you can see we have keys for these, so these are assemblies. And if I go down a bit, what you've got here is keys to the relationships between them. So you can see here that, well, the reason I've got inheritance going all to externals is because, well, there's system.object in there. Incidentally, we are working now on just removing that because it's not helping. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to delete the unit tests. And the scenario here might be, I want to understand how this depends on the TFS framework underneath. Suppose I was going to try and get this tool to work with another work item system like Jira or something like that, okay? How am I going to do that? What changes do I need to make to my code? That's the sort of question I'd be looking at. So the first thing I'm going to do is open externals, and most of this I'm not interested in. The two things I am interested in are the Team Foundation stuff, which I'll select, and then I'll just group those, okay? So if I go TFS like that, all right, I'll move that group out, and I can just go and delete externals like that. Okay, we'll just relay out top to bottom. So now I can see my dependencies from the code here on TFS. All right, now try figuring that out by looking at the code. Now I see here immediately I've got a dependency from the website, and I could expand to see a bit further, from the website. So now I've opened that and I'm seeing namespaces here, and I can click on these to try and see where the dependencies are. And I can see it's from the controllers down to here, okay? So I'm probably not going to want this. If I'm going to get it to work in another work item system, I better make sure that dependency is not there. So I can actually select that dependency, right-click, and go, I'll do it on a new diagram, show contributing links on a new code map, and let that just come through. And now I can see exactly what's causing the problem.
Why do we have this kind of errant reference?
Exactly, okay. And I can go through there, and I can see the links. And even better, I can just double-click on the code, on the node, and now it brings up the code side by side, and I can go through. And in fact, we didn't know that dependency was there till we did this analysis. And when we looked, it's quite, if I can, where was it? It was save changes. Hang on, what happened there? Let me, there we go, save changes. So if I look here, and if you go and look where the problem is, it's actually fairly subtle. It's in this bit, in the process here. For some reason, this has got lots of squigglies underneath. I don't know
and yet
why
we were still able to generate.
Yes, well, it was from the binary. So perhaps I need to rebuild it again. Okay, so the problem here is actually it's in here, and this process refers to something deep down in the TFS framework, because in fact it's a property of the writer, and it's using something, a sort of templated class and so on. So it was quite subtle. You wouldn't have spotted that without this kind of analysis. Now you know where to look.
You have that clue, and you can go dig it out.
Exactly, yes. Now, so, sorry, I'll just cancel that. So if I go back to my original diagram, I'm just going to close that now. and no, and I'll go back to my original diagram here. Okay. Now we can have a look further and see where some of the other dependencies are. Well, actually, no. So I could look and I can see now where the dependencies are on TFS. Actually, this looks not so bad because there's a clean separation out into this namespace of storymaps.tfs, although this dependency is rather thick. So I'd probably want to go and investigate this a little further. I won't do that now, but to find out what's causing that, and is there any further factoring out I could do that would reduce that dependency?
But it's cool that you get to think visually, right? Like even like you're looking for one problem, you might notice, hey, this arrow is thicker than I expect, or why is this little gray arrow here? And these problems kind of surface themselves to you.
Yeah, so what I want to show you now is just this filter. So this is added in the preview, 2015 preview. What this allows you now to do is to filter out the arrows. So I'll just collapse those again, all right? And what I'm going to do is just work my way downwards. So I'm now going to remove all the inherits. I'm removing the implements, now the calls. So now I can start to see the things underneath those. So I can see there are function pointers. I can remove those. Now I see there are some field reads. I also see there are some field writes. That's from testing. It's probably all right to call that from field there. Now I remove the field reads. That's a bit more worrying. I'm writing a field from this other DLL. That's probably not good practice, okay? And I can expand a bit as before, and I can try and see where that is. So if I go back up here, sorry, it zooms. If I go back up here and I look, I think it's this one, you can see the blue is going to there. Now, I could expand this arrow. I won't, because what happens, we haven't quite done the work where it will actually filter the expansion only to that kind of arrow that you're interested in. So you get a lot of stuff. But that's on the backlog. We hope to get there by RTM to actually solve that. So you can really drill in. Yeah.
Speaking of that, which version of Visual Studio will users find this on? That's a question coming from users.
This is Visual Studio 2015. Oh, which version?
Which
SKU? Ultimate.
Fantastic.
Okay, right.
Awesome.
So what else did I want to show you? Yeah, so then thinking about this dependency thing, I think what I'll just show you one extra bit with the code maps, and then we'll go back to the dependency thing and the validation, and then we can then talk a bit about that. So now suppose I want to explore a bit more. If I look here and I just put these, I'll put all these back, okay, and I'm looking at these relationships, and I click on a few things, I can kind of see that all paths are leading to story maps. You see that goes through there, and it goes through there. So if I want to try and understand, I'm going to switch mode a bit now. I want to try and understand the code a bit. It looks like the story maps model might be something worth looking at. So another feature we've added, I don't want to expand that here because I might want to come back to this high-level view. So another feature we've added for 2015 is the ability to create a new graph from the selection. So you don't have to go and find how to create a new code map, do copy and paste. You just create it. So I can now put that on a new graph, and now I can start to expand that. Okay. Oh, now that looks a bit daunting. There's quite a lot on there. So how can I clean this up? Well, I can just filter out a load of the links, which is what I'm doing now. Okay. And I can lay out and do a bottom to top layout. And now I've got a nice sort of inheritance graph. So that's a good place to start. I immediately see work item is a key thing. And then I can start adding some of these links back.
Right, and so this is the kind of awesome ultimate stuff that you get, right? Like you imagine an enterprise solution that you're kind of new to, you've been thrust into it, and there's 20 projects you're trying to really understand, and this lets you kind of dive right in.
And what we're working on is node filtering. So you saw at the start I deleted some test code and things. What we're working on is so you can just say, don't show me the test code, all right? Filter out these kinds of nodes. And don't show me assemblies, just show me namespaces. Things like that, which will make it much, much quicker to find what you're looking for. And in this case, you might say, don't show me the orphan nodes. So all that stuff on the bottom would just get removed, and you just see the inheritance hierarchy. Okay.
So one question that's coming in, which languages does this feature support?
It's C#.
C#.
C# and VB. There is sort of some support for C++, and in fact I've got a meeting later today to talk with the C++ team a bit more about how we can enable that. With C# VB it's a lot easier, and we've got Roslyn now, but even before then we've got a way, it's an easier language to get that structural information and so on. C++ is a much tougher nut to crack, and we've got to work on that.
What about web languages like TypeScript, JavaScript?
TypeScript would be the next one I think we go for. The JavaScript's quite tricky because it's a far more dynamic language. TypeScript adds the typing on top, so it's amenable to this kind of treatment.
Gives you stronger arrows to work with.
Exactly. The other thing we're looking at is dependency injection, okay? Because a lot of people use dependency injection in different frameworks, and what we'd like to do is have a pluggable model whereby you can write an add-in for your favorite frameworks, which will pull up and add the dependencies for your framework. So we need to think through how to do that. Okay. Just on the performance aspect, I'll just quickly flip to this one. So this is actually the Roslyn solution from the public open source thing, and I'll just show you creating a map of this for solution without building. So I'll do that again. So I've pre-built this and pre-indexed the assemblies, and now it will build the graph. Shouldn't take too long. Now what you'll see when you here it comes is what you'll see when it puts that is there are a lot of projects here. Okay, in fact, about a third of these are test code. Okay, and I'm not going to do it now, but you can clean it up by grouping things and so on. Except that if you look in the Solution Explorer, they've done a reasonable job of grouping things. So one of the things we're doing at the moment is actually when you create a map of a solution like this, it will automatically add groups for the solution folders.
Start to leverage the grouping people have already done.
So if people have already done grouping, we'll have it, okay? And then we're starting to think about how we can, if you regroup things on the diagram, how you can push those changes back into, say, your solution folders or other grouping schemes. So we're kind of working on that. Let's go back to that dependency analysis, and I'll go back into the story maps here. And what I want to show you now is another designer, which we have, that you can use now, which is the layer designer. Okay, and I won't create one for you. This was a pre-prepared one. So this is very kind of similar. I've got my layers here, and you'll see they kind of match those namespaces. And in fact, just to show you how you can quickly create this, if I go to the, I'm looking for the class view. Where's the class view?
What's the keyboard for that again?
Let me do view class view. I'll do it the old way. Right. Okay. So there's the class view, and if I wanted to drag a namespace on, I could, for example, drag. Well, let's take this hasn't got the tests on, so let's drag one of those. For example, I could take that and drag it on. So this is another feature we've added, is the ability to drag onto the layer designer from the class view, and indeed from code map. So you can drag onto the code map from the class view and the object browser, which you couldn't do before. Right. So that's how you can create things from stuff in the class view, which is quite a nice way of doing it. So I'll just delete that. Now, what this is saying is essentially, so I've added this. There's a way of, if I right-click, there's a way of generating the dependencies, so it gets the existing dependencies, and then you can go and delete those dependencies for the ones you don't want.
The ones that kind of snuck into your project unexpectedly.
Well, remember that one between Backlogs Maps website and Team Foundation?
Right. Okay,
there was a dependency there, all right? Now, what you can do with this is you can right-click, and I can go validate architecture. So what this is now running over, it's running over all the code. It's not using Roslyn because it predates Roslyn. And one of the things we want to do is actually integrate this validation with the new code analysis stuff, so that you can imagine a pack of architecture validation rules that you have. Okay, and so when that's done its job, so now we've got, has that finished? I'm just having a look. Yeah, so now you see the errors come up here. Okay. And if I double click on that, that will actually either take me to the layer design, or I can say go to, where is it?
The next one, invalid dependency.
It's that one, yes, sorry, I was clicking on the wrong one. So when I click on that, that will actually take me to the code where the problem is.
Yep. Okay,
so you can see how this is very close to what we've got with the code analysis, and now what we want to do is bring those stories together so that it's a single seamless experience.
And we're able to show all those things in one place, right? You can start to filter. Do you want to see layer things right now, or compile the warnings and so on?
Exactly. And the other thing is why is this on a different graphical designer than the code map? Right? It shouldn't be. We should have an experience where you see the rules overlaid on top of the code map, and you can overlay and see the errors. And we've been talking with Alex and others about We could even do that with other code analysis errors. You could have a code map and you can visualize those errors on top. So that's the kind of direction we want to take.
It's cool to see that we get this kind of infrastructure in place, right? Like we've got Roslyn now. We're building some cool stuff. You've seen the analyzers. There's other experiences that you can see. Actually, if I could even just show some of those. I could show it right here in your in your solution. Well, because this one might have some build things I could even show here. Just like the kind of experiences that we've got. Like imagine I go here to the new entry validator, just some other random type, and like I'm renaming this. And as I start renaming it, you see that we're able to pull this kind of intelligence right into your editor, and like that's the kind of stuff that you guys are doing with CodeLens. We're kind of doing this all up around the IDE, and you get this core intelligence that comes around your code from things like Roslyn, and then you can start to build cooler and cooler and cooler experiences on top of it. This is like sort of just scratching the surface of what we can do now inside the
So this experience, you could start renaming. It used to have like a modal dialog that comes up and then gives you a preview of what might happen in a small window.
Yeah, and the benefit is, right, like let's say I start typing the new name here, right? Like this isn't just sort of a multi-selection and I'm typing across all of them. It's intelligent. As I type message, we see, well, I've already got a parameter named message. You probably don't want to call this one message. That's going to cause a conflict. And there's all sorts of fun stuff you can do. Sometimes you type something, well, we could refer to that still, but we're going to have to add a this dot, and it'll go put the this dot in for you, right? So just kind of leveling up what we're able to do, what kind of code intelligence we can have.
So Anna, there are a few questions here about code map, if I could just answer. So the first one is, for code map, could the map be changed to use shades instead of colors? You can actually go and, for those who are colorblind, right, okay, you can actually go in and edit the categories and change the colors on the categories, okay?
Where do you do that? Is that in Tools Options?
Yeah, no, it's just let me. Sorry, I'm lost now as to where we are.
Just minimize that one.
Minimize that one and flip back to the other one. Right. So here we go. Right. So if I go back to one of these code maps here, I'll do the first one I had. So here. So if you look at these things here, you can actually go right click and go. Where is it? I think background, stroke and stuff, and you can go change those. Once you've got that, you can actually copy the legend and you can paste it onto other maps, and it will replace the legend on that map. So if you want to do that, there is the way of doing that, okay? Then is there support for creating entity relationship diagrams for entire SQL databases? Not yet, not with this tool. I was actually, when I was at TechEd Europe, I was discussing with the SQL team, the team responsible for the SQL tools in Visual Studio, and we were talking about that. Not only actually the visualization of that, but also the visualization of the connection, the dependency connection between C# code and SQL.
Right.
And those kind of things would be feasible as well.
And you can you make sure not just that your code holds together, but that your data access layer holds together with your database.
Exactly. Now, the next one is CodeMap supports member level references. Yes, it does. In fact, I can just quickly show you that. So if I go to this one, work item, all right, this is a class. Now, imagine what you can do in backlog maps is you can edit certain pieces of information. And we have an enum here that tracks the piece of information that you can edit and the kind of thing that you're changing. Mm-hmm. So suppose I want to come in here and now actually add a capability to edit the titles of things straight from the visualization. So I'd need to add a new enum literal in here. Yep. So my question is, well, what's that going to impact? What's that going to take? All right. So I go up to my references indicator. Oh, look, there's a show on code map. I could try and work my way through that list. That's a bit much. So I'll go show on code map here. And no. What I'll do first is, so what it will do by default is show it on the map you're showing. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, that was a mistake because there's too much on there. So I'll go to the architecture and use my new code map button so I see the right one. Okay. And then wherever I was in the, work item. Now let's do it again. So I go here and I go show on code map. And now it will go to the last one that was selected. Okay. Now, what you are seeing here is the member level references to this change property enum. So what I'm going to do is just select these. I'll take away the change property thing. I'll right click and you can then say show containing type. So you can now add in the context of the types, okay? So that's now put them all in type, and I can select again, right click, and this time say show container, which will actually then, it will add the namespaces in.
So you kind of choose what detail is
Right.
relevant to you.
Now, when we've finished the filtering, there'll be a clickable boxes here to say show namespace, show type. So it will be very easy. You won't have to do those 2 steps I did. All right? And then I can lay that out like that. Let's do a left to right layout. And now I have a map which I can start going round, and I can double click to explore the code and stuff like that. So
it's very neat because now it's just showing the namespaces. It's showing the stuff that I can reason about.
It's only showing the stuff that referred to that thing. In fact, if I just go up again and where is it, layout, and I clear the result highlighting there. So you can see the key. It's only showing the stuff relates to that. And if you look at this, if I just zoom in a bit over this, you'll also see patterns, okay? So, which is hard to see from the code. I can see all these have sort as parent. Probably if I go and look at one of them, the same will apply to the others.
It's kind of an abstraction I can try to pull
That's
out.
right. And then if you look at this one, if I just zoom in here, all right, this is interesting. I've now got a process here which seems to be calling to 3 sub-processes. And interestingly, each of these seems to be for a different kind of data. And immediately tells me I've probably got to change something here, even without looking at the code, because I want to have something that is right title. And that's going to appear there. So you kind of see how this can help you get an insight. It's the patterns
Top
you
down,
see that it's the patterns you see that it's hard to see from the code otherwise.
So another question. So a lot of the stuff that you're seeing today in Visual Studio 2015 comes from user requests. And we look at user voice for kind of what people are asking for and want us to focus on. And also, we have Send a Smile functionality within VS Feedback, within Visual Studio that allows us to...
Right up to in the upper right-hand corner, there's a smiley face. You can send us a frown, or, well, send us a smile first, and then send us a frown. And these go directly to us. We have this site where we can read them in real time, so I encourage you guys to send them here. We do read every single one of these. And you can send a screenshot as well too. And if you want us to contact you, that works really well if you're willing to get in touch with us. So we should encourage folks to send us their contact info as well.
See, so there it's added the screenshot into the sender. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, and we're building in a lot more functionality into this feature so that you can file bugs this way as well, and so you're not having to go off to connect all the time to...
So again, you stay in the IDE,
and
you can just do the things you need to do.
And this is a fantastic way to kind of stay in touch and reach out to the different Visual Studio teams and the product teams that are working on Visual Studio to try and get the best kind of experiences for you based on what you need and what you want.
And I encourage you guys to use these channels, right? Like the other one is user voice that we check when people have suggestions, and you guys want to let us know like what the big things are that you want us to work on, and we look there, right? Things like we want improved debugging. We want like Link to work inside the expression editor when I'm using a watch or I'm using something like that, right? That's the stuff that we look at and we help prioritize during our product cycle. And we've added that in, right? We've added the fact that the expression editor can now use Lambda expressions and Link and all those kind of awesome things, right? And primarily because you guys gave us the feedback.
So visualstudio.uservoice.com. It's for
fantastic.
All of your great ideas.
So kind of recapping some of the stuff that we've seen. There's this theme that started with Visual Studio 2013 around how do we help you stay in the zone while you're coding, kind of focused on the task at hand. And we've seen things like the inline renaming, and we've seen things like the code analysis analyzers, along with the Azure kind of not just errors, language errors, but also kind of higher level concepts around the different, whether it's SDKs or platforms that you're trying to target. Is this something that we'll keep working on? Is this a theme that kind of continues beyond 2015?
Yeah, and it's a theme that even continues sort of within 2015, if you like, right? The fact that we're going to ship at some point our RTM and you could buy the product, right? But then after that, there's this kind of more continuous wave, right? We've each release kind of been getting into this more continuous cycle of updates that we do, and especially now that this stuff comes from NuGet, and it's something that it's not like the FX Cop team has to do. Every team that owns an API can go ship these things, and you can expect a much more steady stream of this kind of stuff.
It's really fantastic that as a being in the product team, knowing that you don't have to wait 2 years for your next release, that you can just keep delivering that value again and again. They're all incremental value.
And that's even where feedback is even more important, because we can
exactly.
now...
We can change. We can steer. In fact, we've done with the code lens on Git stuff. We did a lot of initial prototype and user studies and stuff like that. Got people to play with it. People who were using Git, they gave us tons of feedback. And then it goes out wider to customers. You get feedback. You make changes. We can keep on iterating like that.
I love to. The updates feel very lightweight. I feel like, and I hope our customers think that too, because it's not like I've got to install a whole other version. So I think you'll start to see everyone feel more comfortable in accepting these updates, and they've got a ton of value in them too. So.
Especially with having a community edition that allows extensions as well. So even the ecosystem for kind of innovative new things, both existing stuff on the gallery and the kind of the new groups of people that will join in and build cool stuff on top of Visual Studio.
That's exciting.
There are a couple of questions here. We've got time?
Yes,
let's. So it says, does the code map help to detect dead code? There are actually analyzers on the Hogue. Let's see if I can find one again. Here we go. Let me see here. So let's just close that. So if I'm on this diagram, if I go, layout, probably it's under layout, analyzers, and there's an unreferenced node analyzer, okay? So if you're looking at a body of code, I can see so in this case, it's only a partial map, so that's why, but it shows you the things that aren't referenced. So if you were looking at it, you could see, oh, look, within the namespace, these classes aren't referenced at all. They could be got rid of, okay? Now, that's a visualization. It would be great to have analyzers that would find that. You don't have to visualize it. You know, we want to put a lot more emphasis on that analysis so that you can get answers like that. And then if you want to see it, then you can visualize it.
Fantastic.
And export. Yes, if you go here, you can copy an image, okay, and paste it and stuff like that. So it's not to Visio as such, but you can copy an image and paste it into Visio.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
So again, feedback, guys, be in contact, reach out. A lot of the stuff that we work on and focus on is for you and because of feedback that we're getting. Thanks, everyone. We'd love to kind of keep seeing awesome stuff, come closer to the editor, to the IDE, just making the experience for developers just more awesome. Thank you. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.
Thanks.